Davante Adams has been cut by the New York Jets. There'll be no trade here. And, I think he's still good, Sam. He's getting older,
Yeah.
but I think he's still good. Now, let me give you this caveat here when it comes to receivers before I get some ideas on where you think Davante could land. Last year at this time, I felt pretty good about Stephon Diggs being a contributor. He got hurt. When Amari Cooper was traded midseason for the Bills, I felt pretty good about him still being a contributor. He had a couple games where he helped the Bills, but wasn't really an impact player in a spot where they could use an impact player like an Amari Cooper. And then DeAndre Hopkins, similar. I thought that was a great move by the Kansas City Chiefs. How could the league let the Chiefs get DeAndre Hopkins, and he, outside of a couple games, wasn't really a major factor for the Chiefs? So my point in all this is that big name receivers, can hit a wall, right? They can hit a wall in pretty quickly. So is there a little buyer beware on Davante Adams? Even though the last thing we saw from him, he was the best receiver on the Jets for Aaron Rodgers down the stretch. It feels like he could still play. Is there a good fit for Davante? Should we be cautious about where he is in his career?
Yeah, I mean, both. Like, he can definitely still play, right? Davante Adams is still a really good player, but he's 32 years old, and you would be crazy not to factor that into whatever deal you're looking to sign him to if you're bringing him in, right? So there's plenty of teams where immediately Davante Adams would be a massive upgrade, if not their best receiver. I mean, best receiver, you obviously have to look at someone like the Patriots. Davante Adams is their best receiver right now if they signed him. Now, young quarterback, how long is he a solution for? That's a question to debate. I think with the Patriots, you can construct a similar argument to the one I was making a few years ago for DeAndre Hopkins and Bryce Young. It doesn't matter that he's a short-term option, right? It's not like people think because you have a young quarterback, the only players you should be focusing on are long-term solutions, right? Guys that can grow and develop with him so that in 2 or 3 years' time, everybody's hitting their prime together. I don't think it works like that. Like, you just need an upgrade. You just need a player that's good right now that Drake May can work with. And if that only lasts 2 years and you then move on to the next guy, it served its purpose, right? The point was to make the situation around Drake May viable so that in a couple of years' time, like, he's good. He's been able to develop, and now you can go find a receiver that can work with him for the next 8 years or whatever. But, like, I don't think it necessarily tallies that just because Drake May looks like the guy and you expect him to be there for the next 10 years, you need a receiver that can, match paths with him the whole way. Like, Davante Adams to the Patriots makes some sense to me, and he would be their number one receiver. But I think for other teams, that are looking for a solution that lasts more than a year or two, you have to look at them and say, I don't know how long you're going to get Davante Adams for. So, Pittsburgh, right? Would he be a great compliment to George Pickens? Yes. Do they want to bring him in knowing that might only be a 1 or a 2 year thing? And how expensive is it going to be when they do it? Like, that's the debate you have to work with. The aging thing, though, is interesting because the other thing I would say is that, look, on the one hand, Davante Adams was never like an athletic phenom, right? He was a technician, and his work was by route running and being able to just destroy people with technique. In your mind, you sort of think that would age better than a guy who gets by on athleticism and suddenly the athleticism goes away or they lose a step. It doesn't always tally that way, though. Like, sometimes even the guys that are technicians, when they lose a step, like, they lose it everywhere, and the technique doesn't work as well because DBs aren't giving you the respect that they used to. Suddenly they're getting more aggressive and they're messing with your technique. And that can change everything. The other thing is, look, Davante Adams has always been good. He has, however, been uniquely special when Aaron Rodgers is there. And that symbiotic connection that they have, the telepathic work, the back shoulder stuff, like, that works both ways. It's both the best version of Aaron Rodgers, but it's also like Davante kind of needs those plays to be as good as he can be, because a lot of those plays, he's not quote unquote open. It's just Rodgers knows if he throws a back shoulder, it's single coverage. Adams will adjust, right?
Right.
You need to put him somewhere where the quarterback is willing to put those balls in the air, and that's not everywhere, right? So Adams, I think, is a really interesting add to this free agent group, and I think he helps a lot of teams. But it's not like you need to be careful what you're bringing, the team that's bringing him in, and that they're prepared to use him the way that he needs to be used.
Yeah, a couple things on Adams. There were rumblings yesterday that people connected those dots, obviously, like, hey, wherever Aaron Rodgers goes, Davante goes.
Right.
But the rumors coming out with that Davante would rather just be on the West Coast than with Aaron Rodgers, that might be priority one versus being with Rodgers. If that is the case, the Chargers have a massive wide receiver need and cap flexibility. As I said, most of the teams that have the high amount of effective cap space, most of them have rookie contract quarterbacks, but it's the Chargers up there as well who have Justin Herbert locked in. They have Ladd McConkey. Do they want to go into the draft with a massive wide receiver need with some questions at the top of the draft? He would be a nice complement, I think, to Ladd McConkey for at least a year or two. Of course, the other team that we keep connecting as needing an X, so to speak, is the Buffalo Bills. And we said, look, there's no free agent options. There's very few draft options. All of a sudden, Davante Adams. Now they're not on the West Coast or anything, but is that a good fit, or is that actually not a good fit for the way the Buffalo Bills have been drafting? Because, as you mentioned, not only was Adams pretty special with Rodgers, he's just special in like a high volume attack as well, where he's getting 10 to 15 targets because he's earned those through the years. Part of the reason why it probably didn't feel like Amari Cooper was a big impact for the Bills is because of how they're playing the offense, is because it's Khalil Shakir when he's open, it's Dalton Kincaid when he's open, it's the backs out of the backfield. They were spreading the ball around. They were running the ball. They were mixing it up from game to game. Do you actually need a high volume receiver who might need to be targeted 10 to 15 times in a game when Josh Allen is just doing a good job of not forcing the ball and not, relying on one or two players like maybe he had in the past? So maybe it's not a great fit for Buffalo. As much as you want a one-on-one winner, I don't know that they want a high volume receiver the way they've been spreading the ball around. So I think the Chargers, though, could be a really nice fit for Davante Adams. You can do the West Coast thing. I saw the chat bring up the Rams, with Cooper Kupp on the way out here and Davante Adams being the number two to Puka Nacua. I think that could be outstanding.
The Rams, I think, are also a great example. Like, Stafford's the type of quarterback that makes sense, right? He will give Adams those opportunities to just win that aren't technically, open, but he knows are safe, comfortable, good targets for Adams to get. I really like that from a quarterback wide receiver connection standpoint. I don't know if I love it necessarily overall for the Rams, but I think that definitely makes sense, just connecting those two players. I wonder if Arizona, I'd like generally a lot of young receivers, Kyler Murray, whatever he is as a quarterback at this point, but like Davante Adams with that receiving core adds some teeth that aren't necessarily proven or there consistently with Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson. I think that would be an interesting connection. It's not technically West Coast, but it's West adjacent.
It is West adjacent. It's not on the coast. West Desert.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.